and professor of history at Rice University, Douglas Brinkley. Professor Brinkley, it's great to have you with us. Let's start with a look back at history through the eyes of J.D. Vance and his criticism that previous presidents were dumb, this president was smart. This is happening at the same time that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was saying the intelligence doesn't matter, yet again politicizing the intelligence community that led us to this moment. It seems that history is repeating itself, albeit with different leaders.
Well, yes, and the War Powers Act's been corroding. It's been evaporating over recent years, but you can just go back to counter J.D. Vance. Ronald Reagan in 1981 condemned Israel for striking a facility in Baghdad that they said was a nuclear reactor. You had George W. Bush attack and criticize Israel for striking a reactor in Syria. So Israel's always wanting to deal with, as it should, with existential threats in this region. But this time around, we're now goaded into this. The proper thing would be to go for international law and U.S. law to go through the Senate and have a hearing. And very well, the votes will be there for Trump in a war with Iran, but to keep the American people just shut out of it all, as if we're living in some sort of authoritarian Trump land, is a dire mistake for our democracy.
Historically, why have previous presidents been hesitant to take this kind of action against Iran?
Well, you know, Jimmy Carter, when he was president, we had famously President Carter against his own. He was trying not to let the Shah of Iran into the United States, but Henry Kissinger and others, the influencing to leave the Shah here. And then the Shah bounced around the U.S. and we sent him to Panama, and he went to Egypt and died. And of course, we have the hostage crisis under Carter, but Carter refused to bomb Tehran to free the hostages, because he was a president concerned with human rights, humanitarian concerns, and triggering a potential World War III or world cataclysm. So Carter is a 180 opposite of what President Trump has just done here with Iran. And it's a large country, big military with big power. And we just had, I love our veterans, what they did in Iraq and what we've done in Afghanistan. But there is a kind of allergic reaction to getting involved with another war in the Middle East, wars that have been going on there for thousands of years. On the other hand, Israel's our great friend, and we have to defend that democracy. It's not a good idea to have nuclear reactors there, but the intelligence is all pickled. Even Trump's own administration has two views. Did, as Netanyahu say, Iran have the ability to make nuclear weapons? Did they? Or did they not? But we don't want to do the ropey-dope game that George W. Bush did when there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq until there weren't. And so we need to act with clarity, and you do that by going through the Senate, taking a vote, sharing your intelligence information so the American people feel part of the decision, along with our troops feeling that this is a democratic action.
Professor Brinkley, this all comes at a time when Trump is doing quite poorly in terms of favorability ratings on domestic issues, whether we're talking about inflation, the economy, immigration, his handling of protests, et cetera. I'm curious, is there any historical correlation between presidents' willingness to take more aggressive military action at times when their domestic agenda or their domestic popularity is flagging? Is that just a coincidence, or does it seem like there's greater incentive for politicians to take this action then?
Great question. I mean, when you think about Lyndon Johnson back when he was running for president in '64, he was worried that Barry Goldwater, the Republican, was going to out-hawk him on Vietnam. So hence, the U.S. Johnson concocted a Gulf of Tonkin crisis. And out of it, we enter a World War situation with Vietnam. Yet Johnson did the right thing. He rushed it to the Senate. He got a vote. Wayne Morris, senator from Oregon, wasn't into the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. Ernest Gruning of Alaska said no. But at least Johnson, when we went into Vietnam, said, hey, I got approval from the Senate. Cut to Richard Nixon. Nixon's the one who, in 19, Vietnam, started changing language, saying, "Well, look, it's an incursion into Cambodia." No, it's a war in Cambodia. We're bombing it. I don't care. It's a secret bombing, and because of Nixon's malfeasance, we created a War Powers Act, and you have to abide by it. One of the great foreign policy presidents in American history, George Herbert Walker Bush. When Iraq invaded Kuwait, what did Bush 41 do? He didn't go in immediately. He did the methodical work of going through the UN and going through, the NATO and getting the world behind a resolute action. This was just sort of a rogue one-offer, but I think Obama did one a little bit like Trump, and you saw Trump when he took out chemical facility in Syria, his first term. So the idea is you can strike and call it a day, but you're striking a cobra now that can spring in any direction. And at the very least, the policy might be right. Let's work with Israel and take them out, but you've got to go through the U.S. Senate, and I'm hopeful that that will be the case this week. Particularly, I think it will be this Friday. There should be a vote.
Douglas Brinkley, thank you so much for bringing that historical perspective to what we're all living through right now.